Welcome to NovoEDTalks, a podcast for authentic, honest conversations about talent development and the people shaping it. On this show, we sit down with leaders across learning and development, mentorship, leadership development, HR, and people strategy to talk about what's really working, what's changing, and what they're learning along the way. These aren't surface-level interviews. They're candid conversations about building skills, developing leaders, supporting managers, and creating experiences that actually move organizations forward. Before we jump in, a quick word about NovoED. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoED is a people-centric talent development platform built for enterprises and training providers. Business transformation starts with people, and people perform better on NovoED. In today's fast-changing landscape, upskilling requires a new approach. NovoED makes it easy to move beyond the talent development status quo by combing social, collaborative, cohort-based learning with real-world application. The result is future-ready talent built on a platform designed to turn learning into measurable impact. Now, let's meet our guests for today's NovoEDTalks episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for talent development trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Mark Frederick. Mark is a strategic people development leader and corporate learning systems architect with more than 40 years of cross-sector experience and over 15 years in leadership. Currently pursuing a DBA in higher education management, he is recognized for his work in designing and governing corporate learning systems that align people development with organizational strategy. An author, gardener, beekeeper, artist, and neurodivergent thinker, Mark brings a distinctive perspective on leadership, learning, and human potential. Mark, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to my world, where most people see work, I see play. And in my playground is learning strategy, learning architecture, leadership, all those wonderful things that just fascinate me.
I love that. I love that you're so interested in this and that you really consider this play, because I feel like that makes our work so much more enjoyable, right?
Indeed.
Why don't you talk about a little bit, Mark, about just kind of what you're seeing in the landscape today, and what pressures or challenges are most present for some of the learners that you work with today?
Well, I work with two groups of people. As a consultant, I work with boards, but then as a leader myself, I work with my team. So I usually have those lenses on, hence the glasses and the two different frames. From a consulting position, I work with senior leaders, boards, across the board, in particular when it comes to things like learning strategies or aligning strategy with the organizational learning systems. And I use learning systems deliberately because it's different from just delivering courses and programs. The system is systemic. In that it aligns the various courses and programs with the organizational systems, which is critical, particularly when you're looking at sustainability and a long-term view. I think in that situation, the understanding of what learning and training is critical. And I don't think that a lot of organizations think deeply enough. Of course, subject to scale. Yeah. On the other side, governance is also critical because in a lot of situations, the organization may have some of the learning capabilities, but the learning leadership isn't given the decision rights and that sort of thing to allow them to function. So sometimes that is a challenge, and we need to work through that. In case of my own personal approach to working with teams on the ground, I think we don't give them enough leeway to be themselves. I think it is critical that we understand that individuals are just that. There's nobody going to be like you. And if you want them to work like you, you're pretty much wasting your time and theirs. The reality is that everybody learns differently. Everybody has different strengths. People make decisions based on their own personal strengths. And in the same way, you can get to a particular location by several routes. You have to allow them to choose their routes because that allows them then to perform at their best. If you try to pretend to be somebody else, you're not going to be at your best. And I think we need to look at things like that when you're leading individuals, especially if you're leading high level, high performing individuals who you hope and expect to have their own minds because you really want them to be the decision makers at some point in time.
Absolutely. That's such a maybe a simple concept, but so profound and something that I think we're overlooking maybe across the board for learners when we're thinking about trying to create, like, we get so focused on creating the scalable systems, right? That we forget that everyone's going to have different paths to do that. And you still have to make them scalable in that way. But what an advantage for you, Mark, to kind of to work with like both sides so intimately and kind of understand the challenges both are facing and how they weave together.
For me, that's what makes it really interesting. I get to see and work with both sides. It's difficult sometimes because you are the bridge between the two, and you're trying to get one side to see what you are seeing, but you know, but it's easier. I use a lot of metaphors, and I usually would say, for example, if you take a banana tree and you plant it in the middle of the Sahara Desert, it's going to wither because it's in the wrong environment. But if you take it and you plant it somewhere up in Jamaica, Blue Mountains, and it's near a stream, it's going to flourish. It's the same banana, it's just two different environments. And so, as leaders, we need to create an environment where our team members flourish. The challenge is that you may have a banana, you may have a cactus, you may have a mango tree, and therefore you need to lead each of them carefully. And the first thing is to understand who and what they are, what they produce, and then you can make decisions about how you lead them. Right? It's not one size fits all.
Absolutely. What a great metaphor. I love that. I'm also a plant person, so I think.
Okay, wonderful.
Mark, if you think about kind of like the ideal state of learning or talent development, what does that actually look like in practice?
Again, two lenses. At the corporate level, we're working with boards and senior leadership team. It's all around leadership. How do we create that environment for individuals to grow, for the team to grow? I talk a lot about leadership maturity. Individuals need to understand themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, how they come across to other people in order to motivate and get people to move. And when you're moving at an organizational level, it's important that that entire senior leadership moves together because they're being observed. People pick up when there's not alignment between what you say and what you do, and trust is eroded almost immediately. But people see it. So in the ideal environment, I see an organization, again, depending on size, where when the environment is set up so that there is an alignment with the organizational strategy. That's important. I think it's also important when there is a win-win situation. So, for example, organizations would say, well, we are invested in training. But the truth is that the individuals who are being trained are also investing time and effort in the training as well. So if they don't see the investment getting a return, then getting them engaged at all may be a challenge. So again, you need to look at it from both sides. It's not all from one side. And again, from team member perspective, similarly, they want to know that they have a career. They want to need to be able to see how we're going to move from here to there. And in a lot of ways, compensation is not just monetary. It's also, yes, this organization can help me to advance in my particular career choice, or there are opportunities to travel and experience different. All of these things are part of the package. So when we are looking at learning systems, we need to look at the whole package, what the individuals are motivated by, and treat them, especially if they are supervisors, senior level managers, and that sort of thing. They're motivated differently. And so we need to bring in the broader perspective of what that environment looks like.
Absolutely. And where do you think the gap is between maybe these two groups of people, like, and obviously different groups have different gaps for kind of like this ideal state, but also could you talk to like what the gap is between the two, and like where do we still need to kind of like bridge that understanding?
Well, you just said the word. I think the gap is understanding. I think sometimes we're too busy making assumptions to understand what is being told to us. And sometimes it's not verbal communication, sometimes it's behavioral. So I think a lot of it is just sitting down and understanding who you're trying to motivate, understanding what their needs are. A lot of time I hear people talk about, oh, the generation and this generation. The reality is that the generations have observed us and decided they don't want to be like us. And so I think we've kind of created our own monsters in a way. So I think the gap is understanding, one. And I think there is a gap in leadership maturity. It's challenging, yes, I know, to leave egos behind. It's challenging to be able to see that not everything is a trade-off between one or the other, but there is either compromise or two opposing truths can be right. And so it is individuals who can see this, I think, are best able to govern and fill that gap that is missing. So I talk a lot about leadership maturity, and in my books as well, I talk about that. It's a passion of mine.
Absolutely. I love that. I like how you phrase it too, just leadership maturity, because I think that there's a lot that comes with that, right? But that makes for sure a more effective leader. Mark, when you think about just kind of like designing or creating learning experiences that actually stick, what do you look for in that? And like, how do you understand that learners are or see that learners are actually engaged and like taking to heart what they're consuming?
What I look for, again, two lenses. At the corporate level, I look for how much they actually invest in the learning system or training. Are they engaged in partnerships? Are they doing their needs assessments? What is driving them? Are they just throwing courses and hoping they would stick? Are they deliberately aligning it with their strategies? Are they themselves taking part in learning and development initiatives and organizing or even mentoring and coaching? So I look at these subtle things. It's easy to say we do this, but if you observe, and that's one of the quirks about being ADHD, you tend to pick up on these little nuances. So it's important from that perspective. In terms of the organization, looking at the teams and seeing if it's being impacted, there is the whole 4 levels of Kirkpatrick, which we utilize. Return on investment is a difficult one because you can rarely single out an individual initiative and say this is what caused the change. Although the finance people like to hear the monetary side of it. But I look for things like, are the individuals coming back to do more courses and programs? Are they asking for specific things where they know or feel that they may be weak on and need to be upskilled on? Are they ideating? Are they innovating? Are they experimenting? Are they using what they learn to solve problems in the organization? And I think that is where your main impact, and in a lot of cases, your main value is seen. There is software that you can use to look at if learning is actually embedded in actions. It usually needs to be designed into the course or program, and it usually involves the individual employee and the supervisor, because it's now observation and taking notes and recording and that sort of thing. And then from the notes you can get feedback and that sort of thing. So that's great. And I think those are the things I particularly look for, because they're real.
I love that. I love what you said. They're real. It's just like it's human behavior, right?
At the end of the day, that's what training is about: influencing human behavior.
Exactly. Mark, there's been a shift of, what people, and I say this with quotations, call soft skills to more power or durable skills, things like judgment, discernment, decision making, adaptability. How are you thinking about skills development just in general, especially with the rise of AI?
Mm-hmm. Skills are important. It's the foundation. It's how we do work, basically. The movement to the more durable capabilities is the multiplier effect, I would look at it as. In other words, if you want individuals to move from just doing a particular task to now looking at improving that task, etc., training other people in that task, you move into the more durable skills. Knowledge used to be, and I used to be cautiously, that power. Knowledge is power. I don't think so anymore. I think the access to knowledge is, it's so available now on the internet. The difference is really how we use that knowledge, how we take that knowledge and improve systems, improve how we work. So it's knowledge is important, but I think going forward, the durable skills are going to be way more important, especially in the learning ecosystem.
I love that. I love that. Like, that concept, or just thinking about that a little bit, like, yes, knowledge, phrase, knowledge is power, and like what that has shifted.
That's shifted. Yeah.
Mark, how do you think about, because obviously there's still certain roles that require like skills, actual like technical skills to be built and developed. How do you think about, or how do you approach balancing building those skill sets while also, building some of these more like power skills or durable skills?
I don't think it's one or the other. I think they complement each other. There will always be some skills that are always needed. They are the foundation, but the durable skills are what takes it to another level. The durable skills are what allows you to become more strategic, because you're now, as you grow, we're assuming that people who want to move on and you want to get into leadership. It's the durable skills that allows you to look at your environment, to recreate your environment, to make it more more effective. So at some point in time, you're going to be looking at your systems and adjusting them and making them. And so you need to be aware, and you need to be able to make judgments and critical thinking and decision making all now become a part of the movement of that individual. So I see one as enabling, the other one sits on top of the other, especially if you look at career progression and that sort of thing. Once you move in from tactical to strategic, they are critically important. So I think there is a fair balance. I think there is room for both.
That's a good point, that it has to be balanced and sometimes done maybe at the same time a little bit. And like if we, because then it's more natural to kind of understand.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mentioned a little bit about ROI. Like, are there kind of like key performance metrics or things that you look at in programs or want to measure for when you're launching or running programs?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the whole adoption of an ideation, experimentation. When you look for these, you know that your program has transformed. Otherwise, it's just a set of knowledge that sits down in their brains and they have a certificate on the wall and nothing happens. And so we always look to measure the modifiers, the changes in that individual. ROI is important, yes, but I think ROI is probably better measured over a longer period of time. It takes time for people to change, especially in an organization where there is, some major transition going on. It's important for the individuals to display the ability to move, So I measure and I look at measuring the impact displayed by the individuals. That's I think one of the main measures for me. Of course, Kirkpatrick is always timely, because they must enjoy the course, they must get through the exam, so at least there's been transfer. But applicability, how they apply what they've learned is the unit of measure I tend to focus on.
Shifting gears a little bit, Mark, to talk about AI a little bit, do you think AI is an important part of learning strategies today, and where are you seeing the most value of it?
Yeah, it's critical. You can't get away from it. And there was a lot of noise when motor vehicles came into the horse and buggy timeline, and change is always going to be present, and the next generation is going to have some major change, and they're going to be having the same discussion we are having now. The problem is not AI. My father always said a bad work tradesman blames his tools. AI is a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. It's how we decide to use it or abuse it that we ought to be worried about. For learning and training systems, you still look at and measure the impact of the training. So it's not the number of courses, it's not how many courses you turn out. It's still about have the individuals learn? Are they applying what they've learned? Suffice to say that every organization still ought to have an AI philosophy around it, especially if they are in an industry where AI is prominent. But it's still about the people. All right. So the AI is directed at the I think the lower repetitive skills areas where the AI can do the paperwork or the summaries and that sort of thing, which allows the individual to do more critical thinking, which I think most people enjoy more than sorting and that sort of thing. So it can actually enable productivity in a number of ways. So I think AI has its place. It just needs to be appropriately managed. So it's not all about new technology. I think it's more about appropriate technology.
Absolutely. Speak to that a little bit more. Like, do you have or do you suggest that there are certain like guardrails or principles that people put around AI right now as everyone's starting to experiment with it or use it? It's part of so many people's natural workflow now. Like, how do you suggest maybe from an organizational level or leadership level that, folks ensure that people are using it the right way?
There always needs to be guardrails. And I'm not a gun person at all, but if you look at how guns have moved from helping to hunt to the raging war, it's the same thing with AI. So individuals, I think AI should be used to aid workflow. I would be concerned, or I do become concerned, when AI starts to be used to do critical thinking, creativity, these other areas of the cognition. Um, so my guardrails would be about around using AI, not for those particular areas. And I think the organization does have a responsibility to embed AI into their culture. And in the same way, you talk about appropriate use of, other things. You should talk about the appropriate use of AI in your organization. Again, it's also industry specific. So we also always need to look at the industry you're in. Who are your clientele, who is who's at the receiving end, especially if you're using outward facing AI tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, if you look to the next few years, what do you believe that leaders need to double down on? And also, what do they need to unlearn?
From a training perspective, definitely double down on the durable courses, double down on leadership maturity, understanding yourself, unlearn that productivity is measured by course hours or course completions. That's not a good indicator at all. Unlearn that one size fits all. That does not work in industry. It's really about the individuals, and that building a safe space, building a relationship with individuals so that they feel comfortable to learn. I love when my team challenges me. I encourage them to challenge me because I might learn something and they may learn something. And I'm not one to be offended when they challenge me at all. So I openly encourage it. I beg them to challenge me. And to create that safe space where they are comfortable to do so, to come up with new ideas and say, I think there's a better way. I say, sure, let's talk about it.
You hit on such an important thing there, which is, create a safe space to do so. And I think that's really difficult and hard sometimes for organizations, or organizations might think they're doing that. And then they come to find out, it's no one's actually being honest here and giving their real.
Yes, it's critical.
Yes. Mark, to close, what's one lesson that you've learned as a leader and with your years in this space, that you wish you'd known earlier on in your career, or maybe that you pass on to someone just starting out in their career?
I wish earlier on I understood myself better. I wish earlier on I had a better sense of my triggers, my giftings, my blind spots. All of these would have helped me and other persons a lot more. So, looking into the future, I think I would have been a lot further along if I had learned those lessons earlier. And so, for anybody out there who is listening, like a lot of things, when you're on an aircraft, they say put on your own mask first. Understand yourself first. Make sure you are comfortable with yourself first before you start helping other people to be comfortable. Otherwise, you may actually make them uncomfortable. it may actually do more harm than good. So understand yourself first.
I love that, Mark. And especially the part about triggers, right? I think personally I can relate to this because I've, in my older years realized like how reactionary I can be to things. And it's like, oh, when that upsets you that much, take a beat, And I wish I had done it before responding to so many emails that I have responded to in the past. So I will double down on that advice and say, I still have hopefully many years to go and a lot more to learn, but I would definitely say that's something I'm becoming.
Oh, well, I tell people you don't stop learning until you're 6 foot under. So I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner.
That's such a beautiful note to end on, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Thank you to our listeners, too, for tuning in to another episode of NovoEDTalks.